female enemy combatants was the fact that the Red Army used women in combat. The Germans would be forced to recruit hundreds of thousands of women during the war to release more men to fighting units.
For nearly 80 years, it was just another chilling photo from the ruins of World War II. Nazi soldiers standing behind a line of terrified, captured women. It seemed straightforward, grim, tragic, forgotten. But when experts recently zoomed in, what they revealed wasn't just surprising, it was terrifying. A single detail, long buried in the shadows of the image, opened a mystery darker than anyone imagined. What it showed has left historians in shock and governments on edge. What secret was hidden in plain sight for 8 long decades? Join us in this video as we reveal the details. The discovery from the pose of the Nazi soldiers and captured women. A young woman who had been planning to spend her spring break doing something completely different found herself instead going through the old belongings of her grandfather. He had recently passed away quietly in a small retirement home in Munich. He was always known to be a quiet, gentle man. He wore thick glasses and had a soft Bavarian accent. Most people, even his family, didn't know much about him. What they did know was that he had once worked as a journalist during World War II.
By breaking the news of the Second World War,
That he never remarried after his wife died, and that he had a habit of collecting old cameras. There was also one strange thing everyone noticed. He always kept one drawer in his study locked. No one had ever seen what was inside. One afternoon, while the young woman was slowly working her way through his things, she noticed something odd under his desk. A tiny brass key taped underneath. Curious, she peeled the key off and tried it on the locked drawer. To her surprise, it opened. Inside, there wasn't much, just some papers and a small brown envelope. On the envelope was a single word written in German, draußen, which means outside. That word alone sent a strange chill down her spine. She slowly opened the envelope and found an old black and white photograph. It was a little curled around the edges, as if it had been sitting there for many years. The picture immediately caught her attention. The photo showed a line of women, captured women, with their hands tied, standing in front of a group of Nazi soldiers. There were also officials and other people in the background watching. The faces of the women were hard to read. Some looked frightened, others looked strangely calm. Behind them, there was a forest and what appeared to be a train platform. She couldn't explain why, but something about the photo made her fingers tingle. She turned the photo over and saw faded handwriting on the back. It said, "Rona Transit Stop, September 1943. Lubarsa possibly pictured far left." That name, Lubarsa, sparked something in Amelia's memory. She had studied history in college and remembered a class where they talked about the lost women of Warsaw. One of them was allegedly Anna Lubarsa, a young nurse who had secretly helped the Polish resistance by smuggling food and weapons. Anna had vanished in 1943 during the Nazi retreat through eastern Poland. People had always believed she was executed, but no one had ever found any confirmed photos of her. Feeling a growing sense of urgency, the young took out her phone and snapped a picture of the old photo. She sent it to her former professor, who taught modern European history at Ludwig Maximilian University. She included a message that said, "Sorry to bother you during break, but I found this in my grandfather's things. Could this be Anna Lubarsa? Could it be real?" She didn't expect much, maybe just a polite reply or a short thank you. But instead, her professor responded in only 20 minutes. His reply was serious. He said the photo might be very important and that it should be preserved carefully. He asked if he could take it to the Institute for Wartime Archives, a place known for studying and protecting historical records from the war. The young woman agreed, and by the next day, the photo was carefully placed inside a special case that controlled temperature and humidity. Experts began scanning it into a high-resolution database for close analysis. What if the photo didn't just reveal the woman's fate, but also proved that one of the Nazis in it never died at all? Let's delve deeper. The woman in the discovered picture. At the Institute, a lead researcher who had spent years tracking missing female prisoners from Poland took a special interest in the photo. She had never seen a picture like this, so clear, so well preserved, and possibly showing a person who had never been officially identified before. She explained that if this really was Ana Lubarsa, then the photo could be the first and only proof of what had happened to her. It could finally close a long unsolved case from World War II involving crimes committed by the Nazis against the Polish underground movement. Over the next few days, the research team carefully examined every detail in the photo. They focused on the soldiers' uniforms and confirmed that the men were members of the SS, the infamous Schutzstaffel. They also matched the train platform markings in the background to a real location near Rona, which had been used in 1943 as a temporary place to hold political prisoners. But what truly changed everything came next. The team used a special kind of software made for solving cold cases. It allowed them to zoom in and enhance the photo without damaging it. When they looked closely at the woman believed to be Anna, they noticed a very small scar on her left ear. This tiny detail matched medical records from a bicycle accident she had in 1938. Even more amazing, the necklace she wore in the photo, a delicate chain with a small triangular charm, was just like one mentioned in a letter Anna had written to her sister. That's when she said the words that confirmed it all. It's her. It's really her. The young woman could hardly believe it. Her grandfather, the quiet man who never spoke much about the war, had taken what might be the only photo of a brave woman who gave her life to fight back. But then another question hung in the air. Did her grandfather know what he had? If he did, why did he keep it hidden? Was he trying to protect someone? Was he scared? No one had the answers yet. Meanwhile, the Institute started preparing an official report. They planned to share the discovery with the Polish National Archives and UNESCO. The photo was going to be displayed in a traveling museum exhibit about resistance fighters. The young woman signed the paperwork to donate the photo in her grandfather's name, still feeling proud, but also confused. With Ana Lubarsa identified, could someone in that photo have slipped away unnoticed, hiding in plain sight while the world focused on the victims? Let's find out. The mystery man in the background. Then something unexpected happened. A technician working late decided to enhance the other parts of the photo, just for display purposes. He zoomed in on the background details, the train tracks, the trees, the faces of the Nazi soldiers. That's when he noticed something strange. One man in the photo looked different. He stood near the center and had a confident posture. His face was calm, even smug, as if the situation didn't bother him at all. He had a faint smirk, which felt wrong given the seriousness of what was happening in the image. The technician was a postgraduate researcher who paid very close attention to detail. When he zoomed in on that soldier, something didn't sit right. He told the researcher, "This guy doesn't fit. His insignia is a little different. His face is too clean. He's not like the others." The researcher took a closer look. The man had sharp, striking features. He looked proud, not nervous. The technician said he thought he had seen the man's face before, but not in that context, somewhere else entirely. They ran the image through facial recognition software designed to match old photos and documents from World War II. The system had helped in the past to identify guards, survivors, and other historical figures. This time, it gave back a 97% match. Friedrich Kellermann. The researcher was stunned. That couldn't be possible. Kellermann was believed to have died in 1945. He supposedly committed self-harm during the retreat from Leipzig. Every record said so. They ran the scan again. Same result. The name was still Friedrich Kellermann. Kellermann had been one of the most mysterious SS officers of the war. He worked in the intelligence division and specialized in psychological operations. Very few photos of him existed after 1940. Most of what was known about him came from scattered reports and rumors. His body had never been recovered after the war. Now, it seemed he might not have died at all. The lab team dug deeper. They pulled files, testimonies, and declassified reports. One report, from 1951, came from Interpol. It mentioned a man in Argentina named Federico Kellmann, who had applied for a shipping license. Attached to that file was a grainy photo from a 1973 obituary. The resemblance was striking. Same sharp features, same brow and nose, but one small detail confirmed it: a bent pinky finger on his right hand, matching a known boxing injury from Kellerman's youth in Frankfurt. The researcher stepped back from the screen. She realized that the photo didn't just capture a victim. It may have also captured a fugitive, a man who wasn't supposed to be alive, a man who had escaped justice. A historian who had studied Nazi escape routes was brought in to help. He confirmed the possibility that Kellerman had used the rat lines, secret escape routes through Europe, to reach South America. Argentina was a common destination. Kellerman could have assumed a new identity, blending into society while leaving his past behind. They found records of Federico Kellerman living comfortably in Argentina starting in 1949. He ran a business. He was known as generous and well-spoken. He died in 1973 and was praised in the local news. His family had no idea about his past. One of his granddaughters, a human rights advocate, said she was shocked. She described him as a kind man who taught them to stand up for others. Now, she wasn't sure who he really was. Back at the Institute, the researchers kept working. They pieced together a timeline of Kellerman's escape, a forged ID in Austria, travel through Genoa, and arrival in Argentina using a Catholic refugee program. The photo, just one image, had revealed two powerful stories. On one side, it showed the last known moment of a brave resistance fighter, Anna Lubarsa. On the other side, it captured the image of a war criminal who had escaped justice and lived a second life in comfort. The photo was officially placed into the European Holocaust Memorial Archive. In Warsaw, it was displayed in a quiet gallery. Two plaques sat beneath it. One honored Anna Lubarsa. The other identified Friedrich Kellerman, not as a tribute, but as a correction. The photo, once hidden away in a locked drawer, had become something much more. It was proof. It was evidence. It showed that the past, no matter how deeply buried, can always come to light if someone dares to look closely enough. Just as the mystery man raised questions, could a strange mark on a woman's neck in another photo lead to an even deeper secret? Stay tuned for more. Uncovering a forgotten act of defiance. Another very old black and white photograph was found during a project to organize and scan wartime pictures in a historical center. At first, the photo didn't seem important. It showed several soldiers standing behind a line of women lying face down in a courtyard. The women looked like they were being punished or questioned. But when the image was scanned and closely examined on a computer, something unusual was noticed: a small mark behind one of the women's ears. This tiny symbol, a triangle inside a circle, had been mentioned in old wartime stories about a secret resistance group. Many people believed this group never truly existed. They thought it was just a legend made up to give people hope during dark times. But now, with this mark clearly showing in the photograph, some experts began to wonder if those old stories were actually true. The woman with the mark stood out from the others. While the other women showed fear, she looked calm. Her head was slightly turned so that the symbol was clearly visible to the camera. She appeared to have done it intentionally, as if to convey a message. Despite having a little cut and a bruise on her face, which indicated that she had been injured, she maintained her composure. It was thought by those examining the photograph that this woman might have been the head of the clandestine organization. According to legend, throughout the war, this organization assisted numerous individuals in escaping danger. They moved people across borders undetected by using fictitious documents and covert routes. The members of the group were never fully identified, and it was believed that they were extremely cautious. Until now, there were no known pictures or records proving the leader existed. The photo became the focus of a full investigation. Experts used special equipment to look closer at every part of the image. They checked the uniforms of the soldiers, the layout of the courtyard, and the buildings in the background. They were able to confirm that the photo was taken at a known location used by a secret police force near the border of two countries. That helped confirm the time and place of the image. Then, something surprising happened. After the photo was shown on local news, an elderly woman called the center. She said she remembered the woman in the photograph. When she was a child, her family had been arrested for going against the ruling government. She told how a woman helped her and other children escape by hiding them in laundry carts. She believed that the woman who helped her was the same one in the photo. This new information supported the idea that the woman in the picture really was part of the resistance. More survivors came forward with similar stories. They all talked about a woman who had a small symbol behind her ear and who helped people escape in secret ways. These stories matched the symbol seen in the photograph. Further digging into old files revealed a brief note from the secret police. It said that a group of women had been arrested after an escape plan failed. One of them was described as having strange markings and fake documents for a family of 4. After that, there were no more records about them. There were no signs of a trial or execution. They had simply disappeared. Some people believe these women were assassinated without any official record. Others think they may have been taken for special questioning. There's also a chance that one or more of them survived and started a new life under a different name. The photograph is now on display at a museum. It doesn't try to give all the answers. Instead, it tells a story of courage, mystery, and quiet rebellion. Visitors are drawn to the image, especially the woman who dared to show her mark, even in the face of danger. She is now seen as a symbol of all the brave people who resisted in silence, many of whom were never named or remembered until now. Though the full truth may never be known, this photo has opened the door to a hidden past and honored those who risked everything to help others in the darkest of times. If the small mark hinted at quiet resistance, what more lay beneath the surface, especially for the women who bore the deepest scars in silence? Let's learn more. Under the Shadow: Silent Suffering and Hidden Resistance. As World War II came to an end in 1945, the Allied armies moved into German territory, bringing with them not only destruction and the collapse of the Nazi government, but also widespread suffering for the civilian population. One of the most tragic and often hidden parts of this time was the large number of treatments carried out against women in Germany.
Destruction of property, the killing of civilians, and especially the mass raping of German women.
While the violence committed by Soviet troops has been widely discussed, similar crimes carried out by American, British, and French soldiers have received far less attention, even though they also took part in this widespread mistreatment. When the Soviet army entered Germany, thousands of women were attacked in towns and cities under their control. Reports suggest that over 2 million women were mistreated, with some experiencing repeated attacks. It is believed that around 240,000 women died as a result of these acts. Age did not protect victims. Women up to 80 years old were targeted. Survivors often lived with deep emotional pain, and many were mistreated by their own families or communities after the war. Some were even assassinated by their husbands for being seen as having cooperated with the enemy, even though they were victims. Eyewitnesses in Berlin described women trying to make themselves look unattractive by smearing their faces with soot and wearing ragged clothing. They hid in basements, especially at night, which they called the hunting hours, when drunk Soviet soldiers would roam the streets looking for women. In some cases, soldiers broke into homes, destroyed shops, and stopped locals from collecting spilled food. Fear was everywhere, and many women lived in constant terror of being found. A former Soviet officer later admitted that the troops looked for women because they had been away from home for years and were full of anger. A female Soviet telephone worker said she now felt shame for the hatred she had toward Germans at the time. She admitted wanting to see them suffer and cry. Some Soviet troops, especially those in the first wave of fighting, avoided such crimes. But many of the worst offenses were committed by soldiers who came afterward and took advantage of the chaos. The violence wasn't only committed by Soviet troops. American soldiers also committed many mistreatments after they entered Germany. One historian estimates that around 11,000 cases of maltreatment by American troops took place. Even though American military rules said soldiers shouldn't become too close to local people, these were often ignored. Some troops believed that as long as they didn't talk to women, other contact was acceptable. In some reports, American soldiers forced women into these situations at gunpoint and sometimes left food behind afterward as if it made the act acceptable. How American soldiers were punished for these crimes depended on their leaders. One Australian who served with them said that the punishment often depended on the attitude of the commanding officer. In some cases, soldiers were court-martialed and even executed, especially if they were black. But many white soldiers were not punished at all. This shows a clear unfairness in how justice was applied. British soldiers were also involved, although fewer cases were reported. The British military police investigated some incidents, but most of their efforts went into handling soldiers who left their posts or caused other trouble. Crimes against German women were not a priority. In some cases, British soldiers acted out of stress or drunkenness, but there were also reports of planned attacks. In one event, in April 1945, 3 women were attacked in 2 towns. In another case, a woman was shot after an attempted mistreatment. Many British officers were unwilling to punish their own men, and in some areas under British control, such as Hanover, law and order broke down completely. French troops also took part in the occupation and were involved in similar crimes. Some French soldiers, including Moroccan units, were reported to have behaved much like Soviet troops in Berlin. In earlier years, during the German occupation of France, French women were also mistreated, though some had relationships with German officers to survive. After the war turned, this situation reversed, and some French soldiers acted out of revenge. In areas controlled by the French, hundreds of mistreatments were reported. The violence left behind deep wounds. Some soldiers saw their actions as payback for what Nazi Germany had done during the war. But for the women affected, it was a time of great suffering, shame, and trauma. Many gave birth to children fathered by enemy soldiers and were rejected by their communities. Their stories were mostly left out of history books, and many suffered in silence for the rest of their lives. Only in more recent times have historians begun to speak more openly about these crimes. The goal is not to deny the importance of defeating the Nazi regime, but to tell the full story of what happened. These hidden parts of history deserve to be known so that the voices of those who suffered are not forgotten. In remembering these women, we face the truth about the high human cost of war and the pain that lingers long after the fighting stops. If silent signs hinted at defiance, how did the horrors of the Holocaust expose the deepest cruelty and the silent strength of its victims? Keep watching to find out. The Holocaust, a simple summary of a dark chapter in history. Germany was regarded as one of the world's most significant centers of ideas, science, and culture at the beginning of the 20th century. A significant portion of this society was Jewish. They were educators, physicians, artists, entrepreneurs, and politicians. Many Jewish communities in Europe were prosperous and powerful, notwithstanding the occasional act of hate directed against them. When a new political organization known as the Nazi Party started to gain traction in Germany, things started to shift. Adolf Hitler was the leader of this group, which openly hated Jews and held radical nationalist views. Hitler wrote a book called Mein Kampf.
There's this extract in Mein Kampf in which Hitler remembers his old history teacher, a man called Leopold Potsch,
where he blamed Jews for many of Germany's problems and said they were like a dangerous disease. He promised to get rid of them if he came to power. At first, the Nazis didn't have much support, but after the global economic crisis in 1929, many Germans were desperate. The Nazi Party used this crisis to gain more followers. In 1933, Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. Soon after, a fire broke out in the German Parliament building, and the Nazis blamed it on communists. This allowed Hitler to take full control and turn Germany into a dictatorship. In 1935, the Nazis passed new laws called the Nuremberg Laws. These took away Jewish people's citizenship and legal rights. Life became harder for Jews, and many tried to escape the country, but few other nations would take them in. When Germany invaded Poland in 1939, World War II began. As German forces moved through Europe, they began assassinating Jews in large numbers. Special Nazi groups, along with local helpers in some countries, rounded up Jewish people and shot them, burying them in mass graves. Around 2 million Jews were assassinated this way. The Nazis also forced Jews into ghettos, small, closed-off parts of cities where disease and hunger were common. In 1941, Jews were ordered to wear a yellow Star of David so they could be easily identified. Life in the ghettos was very hard. In January 1942, Nazi leaders held a meeting called the Wannsee Conference. There, they planned the final solution, a step-by-step plan to assassinate all Jews in Europe. From then on, Jews were taken by train to death camps like Treblinka, Sobibor, and Auschwitz. Many were told they were going to take showers, but were instead assassinated in gas chambers. Auschwitz became the most well-known of these camps. It was both a place of forced labor and mass assassination. Thousands of people die there every day. Still, even in these terrible conditions, some Jews fought back. In some ghettos, like Krakow and Minsk, people started uprisings. Others escaped to forests and joined resistance groups that attacked German soldiers and helped other Jews. Some resisted in quieter ways by celebrating Jewish holidays, teaching children, and writing poems and songs. From 1943 to 1944, the assassination grew worse. Ghettos were emptied, and more people were sent to the camps. In early 1945, as the war came to an end, Soviet soldiers reached Auschwitz and freed the people still alive. American and other Allied forces moved into Germany, and by April, Hitler had taken his own life. Germany surrendered soon after. By the end of the war, about 6 million Jews had been assassinated. While the Nazi leaders faced justice or fled into hiding, what became of the women who stood beside them through it all? Let's take a closer look. Devotion, denial, and the price of loyalty. When World War II ended in Europe, many top Nazi leaders tried to escape. They knew if they were caught, they would be arrested, put on trial, and likely hanged for their crimes. Some were found hiding in the mountains, but what people talk about less is what happened to their wives, many of whom stayed behind. These women weren't just innocent partners. Most of them supported Nazi ideas and lived in big houses, enjoying wealth and power because of their husbands. For example, the wife of Rudolf Höss, who ran Auschwitz, lived in a villa near the camp. She later claimed she didn't know what was happening, even though smoke from the crematoriums could be seen for miles. After the war, the Allies started a process called denazification to remove Nazi influence from society. People, including Nazi wives, were judged and put into 5 groups: major offenders, offenders, lesser offenders, followers, or cleared. Many wives were found guilty of supporting the Nazis or gaining from their crimes. Eva Braun, Hitler's longtime partner, married him in a bunker in Berlin just before they both died. She took poison, and Hitler shot himself. Their bodies were burned, and Eva's remains were never fully found. Margaret Himmler, wife of SS leader Heinrich Himmler, claimed she was loyal to the Red Cross, not the Nazi Party. But she still lost her rights and pension because she benefited from her husband's role. Gerda Bormann, wife of Hitler's secretary Martin Bormann, strongly supported Nazi beliefs and wanted men to have many wives to grow the population. She died of cancer in 1946. Emmy Goering, wife of Hermann Goering, lived a rich life before her husband took his own life before his execution. She was later jailed, lost much of her property, and was banned from performing on stage. Lena Heydrich stayed loyal to her husband even after his death. She mistreated forced workers and later won the right to receive his pension. She never admitted he had done anything wrong. Magda Goebbels, wife of Joseph Goebbels, stayed in Hitler's bunker at the end. Believing life wasn't worth living without Nazism, she poisoned her 6 children before taking her own life. These women were not just bystanders, they were part of the system, and many never showed regret. What do you think about the terror of the Nazis? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.